a lot of people want to use AI. A lot of people want to have their own assistant that it's on their phone, on their computer, that does things for them. But like the education is still not there. They still don't know what they don't know.
If you had to compare AI to a previous breakthrough innovation, would you rather compare it to something like the internet or rather to something like the Industrial Revolution?
I don't know if I have a good answer to that question, but like these days, if you use AI, you can be worse or better at your job. And if you don't use AI, you can be worse or better at your job. It's not about AI. It's on you.
Before we dive in, you're listening to the Masters of Search podcast with me, your host, Niklas Buschner. Each week, I sit down with some of the smartest people around the world in SEO and AI search to bring you their strategies, mental models, and top pieces of actionable advice. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It helps us get top-notch guests and create the best possible content for you. Let's dive into today's episode. Anita Kirkovska leads growth and marketing at Vellum, a YC-backed AI startup. She came up through data science before moving into marketing, which means she approaches organic growth, content, and AI tooling from a different angle than most. In the last few months, she's rebuilt Vellum's website off Webflow into a custom Next.js stack, shipped an AI-native GEO content pipeline, and turned off more SaaS tools than she's added. There's a lot to unpack, I feel, so let's get right to it. Welcome to the podcast, Anita.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm so excited to start talking about all of these things.
Yeah, so cool to have you on. And also, heads up right at the beginning, we are hosting our first conference, AI Search Conference. It's called the Masters of Search Conference this October in Berlin. You find all the information in the description or on mastersofsearch.com. And Anita will also be on stage. And I'm super excited that we'll have you. And if you want to learn more about what she's doing, what she learned along the way beyond this podcast, I definitely recommend to check out the site to get, depending on when you're listening to this, maybe still one of the early bird tickets, otherwise just a regular ticket, and join us in Berlin for the conference.
Yeah, I think that presentation is going to be an extension of everything that we're going to cover here. And it might be a bit more practical. So get ready to take notes.
Yeah, I mean, now we're recording this at the beginning of July. The conference is in October. I feel like in AI time calculation, this is basically 5 years. So I also expect you to do a lot of interesting stuff in the meantime.
Yeah, same. Oh God, like October is so far away.
Yeah. I also got the feedback from some people that they cannot plan for October and July. So I think time has really flown. But anyway, let's talk more about you. And what I would be interested in to kick it off is, I also said it in the introduction already, you basically have a data science background, but how did you end up in marketing? I think it's not a natural path, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not. I feel like ever since I was little, I was like this creative kid, and like I always wanted to do that one extra thing. Like I like early on, like I just learned how to get more attention whenever I was doing like any presentations or projects. And so like that actually excited me. But then, everyone was starting to just like learn all of these new technologies, and like the technology started to just like enable all of these business processes and like how companies were being built. And my thinking at that time was that, I need to truly understand how products are being built if I really want to be the greatest marketer. And so like that took me through a path where I actually studied computer science. And my degree in computer science actually taught me on like how to do like better problem solving, how to change my perspective on like how to approach things, which I don't think that like I would have learned that if I studied marketing, if that makes sense. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, how do I expand on this knowledge in the way that it's gonna prepare me for what's to come in the future? And like this was like 2016, and I saw that like a lot of our subjects in school actually were covering like AI, but like AI at that time, it was like this very rigid model that didn't do anything good. But I was like, okay, this is the future. Like I need to get ahead of this. And so I got a scholarship. I got the Fulbright scholarship. I moved to Florida, and I studied data science, and I actually studied in the golden ages of AI, when the paper was published on like how transformers could be built to power the models that we're using today. The paper is like attention is all you need, and like I was studying that at school, and I was building my own neural networks using it. And so like I was deep into the trenches of like, oh, this is so freaking cool. Like this, like 10 years from now. And like at that time I was thinking like 10 years from now, like, and it happened like 2 years after that. I was like, okay, companies are gonna run with this. The whole industry is gonna be changed because of this. Like I need to get ahead of this. And so that took me into a path of like, okay, now I'm done with like understanding the parts of the technical parts of any product, and like how to build a successful product. And now I can truly think about like, okay, how can I position products like this? And so I started to work with a lot of startups. Most of my background is working with YC startups in that field, like in machine learning, in AI, and like having had the chance to understand the technical components enabled me to just like be better at my job and like be better at like positioning products within verticals that I cared about, thinking about the users that are going to use this product, thinking how I can market better to them. And like these days, I think like I've made the best decision, because like now I can enable my team to use AI because it has become so easy. But like I have the right frameworks on how to approach every problem in any different like type of task, no matter whether that's marketing, product, or just like growing a team.
And so I feel like you're probably one of the most AI native marketers I've come across.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that your computer science, data science background, also you digging into these papers, these transformer papers, do you feel like it helps you in like not having to chase every trend that comes up on LinkedIn, but actually approach things more fundamentally and like from first principles, if you want to call it like that?
Oh yeah, it definitely helps me a lot. And that is something that I have found to be like a big challenge with like marketer teams, because like they would use AI prematurely. It's not even about like following trends. It's about like how can you build the right process for your tasks so that AI is actually helpful for you. And so some of the challenges that I've seen is that, marketers would use AI to do their work before they even start to think about the system that they want to create. And in such a scenario, you basically just like let go and you depend on the AI to decide how your work is going to be done. And like that feels powerful in a sense. If you want to automate like a certain task that feels like very repetitive, very manual, but then you're not really producing the impact that you should produce within an organization, because you're not using your common sense. You're starting to trust your AI a lot more than you're trusting your own judgment. You're starting to just like lose agency in the process, and then you're stuck in this loop of like having to chase AI and their outputs and having to fix whatever AI is going to do for your work. And so like if you come from a different background where you haven't really understood AI and how it can impact your work, then and you want to chase it, like if your manager is saying like, oh, you need to use AI, you need to be like 10 times more productive, here's how other teams are doing it. Like there is a lot of pressure on people to use AI. And because of that limit, they do not really think about like giving some time to themselves to actually question the process. Like, how should I approach this? Should I spend a lot of time into building my system? How should I communicate about this to my manager? How should I tell my manager that, wait, like we should adopt AI and we should be using AI, but like what is the right structure here? How can I be more successful with it? How can the organization be more successful in it? And so like I feel like a lot of people are just getting lost through that. And yeah, definitely like my background has helped me build the confidence to communicate that to like the CEO right now, and to communicate that with the team that I currently work with, so that they get to build like a system of thinking in this new age.
Hmm.
Does that make
Now, for
sense?
people to have a little bit more context, can you give us first a quick elevator pitch on what Vellum is doing, and then secondly, take us through a normal day in Anita's life leading growth and marketing at Vellum?
Yeah. So the quick one-liner for Vellum is that we're building a personal AI assistant that they can take part of your work, and that it can also help you with like your life admin ops stuff that you tackle on the daily. Um, we're building this assistant so that it's completely yours. You get to define how it's gonna work with you, and you're gonna basically transfer your line of thinking into an assistant that should be like your sidekick. Because like right now, if you use ChatGPT or if you use Claude, it feels like it's very specific chatbot that someone built for a mass of people. Versus with Vellum, you get to use a very lightweight harness that it's enabling you to build whatever you want. And when I say to build whatever you want, like that might feel heavy for like non-technical people, but like using AI these days, it's like so easy. We come back to the systems of thinking. You just need to apply the right process to make yourself more productive. And so like we really want to help people achieve greatness by, like building their own assistant that they get to decide how it's going to work. And so on the daily, on how like my days look like at Vellum, we're doing a lot of experiments. I think like we're going to also cover how our content pipeline is built right now. But it's a lot of innovation around determining how to build a product that people want to use, how to build a product that could be marketed to a specific group of people on the market right now. Because as you can imagine, like building a personal AI assistant and having to compete with like Claude and Anthropic and like OpenAI, it's a very, very tough job right now. Everything around like engineering is pretty much automated. And now like the biggest weight falls upon like distribution and having the growth team and the marketer team to actually find a unique way on how you can build a repetitive system that is going to bring a lot of people in the top of the funnel. But I'm going to say this thing, like this last few weeks, my biggest focus was on solving activation on day one and retention, because it's a new novel concept that we're trying to build on the market right now. People right now think that our product is like ChatGPT. And like that's only 1/10 of what they can do with this assistant, because like it enables so many other things. And the biggest challenge right now is like there's a lot of pull on the market. A lot of people want to use AI. A lot of people want to have their own assistant that it's on their phone, on their computer, in the browser that does things for them. But like the education is still, not there. They still don't know what they don't know, right? So like I cannot really spin up an SEO pipeline where I'm gonna target people asking questions on what they can do with their assistant, because they still don't know what is possible. So I need to somehow circumvent that and find another way to inspire them of like what could be possible with their assistants. So it's a lot about like moving the right pieces right now on how do we build the right process within activation and retention so that people actually stick with the product and they're enabled and excited and delighted from the product to continue to use it, to actually build it in a way that they dreamed of, if that makes sense.
100%. I would also recommend everybody, we will put the link to Vellum in the description to just check it out yourself and like try it out if you like. But you rightfully mentioned your content pipeline. I think this is a topic that we definitely have to look into. Before we do that, I want to take just one step before, because what actually made me aware of you was your post about migrating the Vellum side of Webflow. So this was a post that you put out on LinkedIn, and I found it very interesting, and also the thinking behind it. Because it was not your average, I can do everything with Claude Code post. It was more nuanced, and it was very, very interesting to read it from like a first-hand real-life experience. So can you take me and also listeners with you and back to that point and let us know why you decided to move the Vellum side of Webflow? Because I think there are still a lot of people that consider Webflow one of the go-to solutions
Yeah.
for content management systems, website builders, etc. And now you obviously had some good reasons for wanting to abandon it. And what were those?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like Webflow has enabled my work for like the last 10 years. It has been like my favorite tool that I've ever used. And I feel like it was so helpful for a lot of marketing teams. It was the best product where you could easily spin up beautiful websites, where you could like easily manage the content. It was so easy to use it for SEO. It was so easy to track everything in regards to SEO. Like they handled a lot of things through like first class features that like every one of us just enjoyed that. But then you get to use coding agents and you get to see how fast you can move, again, with the right processes, right? And then you start to question yourself. You start to think like, well, if coding agents can help us build better products for our business, and if we can build some internal tooling that fast, why are we still stuck in this like no code realm of possibilities? Right. So at first it was a lot of discussions with my engineering team and with like the CEO on like what should we do, and like how fast, like evaluating how fast are we moving with like our content and our pages. And like honestly, like one thing is like creating like SEO articles and like GEO articles in the last 6 months, but then also it's about like creating a lot of programmatic landing pages, and it's also about like testing a lot of different messaging. And like we're a startup that it's still defining our messaging. And I feel like every other week we have a new campaign or a new demo for which we need a landing page where we want to test new messaging. And then we saw the friction in like publishing those pages. Like sometimes it would take a week. We would work with contractors outside of the company because like engineers, they didn't want to work with Webflow. It was, like you need to learn the visual builder. They didn't like the experience. You're like, why are we doing this? Why isn't everything in code? And like for marketers, it's always like, oh, because like we don't know how to code and we also need to be enabled. And like that's the problem that Webflow actually solved for a lot of startups. But these days, when you get to see the full picture, is like shipping new pages has become very slow. Um, I think Webflow had a lot of issues in their visual builder, and just like the pricing changes and all of that, it was like so confusing. I feel like to a lot of marketers, it started to be like very buggy. Um, for us, it was really hard to run PLG experiments because like we're building a product, a consumer product, right? And then it's truly important for us to just like follow the whole user journey of like the source where this user came through, the landing page, and then how do we pass that information into the app. And like that disconnect between like Webflow and our app made things like very hard to manage. And like we were just like building connector scripts between the two isolated systems, and like that was so slow. And again, as I said, like engineers weren't able to easily contribute and help us scale. And so those were like kind of the things that we've evaluated. But then also Webflow was so slow to adapt to this new like coding agents realm of things, or like this new agentic era. Like they didn't do anything. Like they were I remember 2020, like they were talking about like, oh, we're going to introduce all of these AI features. You're going to be able to move faster and faster. Like none of that has happened. And so it feels like they didn't caught up to AI. We're starting to use AI in a more prominent way. We're seeing how fast it could be. And then the question arises, oh, well, can we actually manage our content and our marketing page with AI? And that's where everything starts.
And during that migration process, what
Mm-hmm.
did you learn? Or what were the most like yay moments, and what were the most I don't want to use words here that get us an explicit content label. So what are the what's happening now moments? So what were the highs? What were the lows?
Yeah, frankly, it's a bit of a complex process, and I was so lucky to have the support from our CTO. So I think like number one advice, if I can give some advice here, is that you need to have a great technical partner in this. Like I have a very technical background, but then like having to rely on him to make like better decisions around like how do we actually implement this, like that was, awesome and really helpful. And so what did we learn? So I think in our first iterations, we first wanted to build confidence that this is actually going to work, right? Because like there's still a lot of limits to AI when it comes to like building pages and coding, like vibe coded slop, all of that. And like we wanted to make sure that coding agents at that time when we were making the transfer, and this was January of this year, that they're good enough so that we can build a process around them. And so what we started to actually experiment with is that my CTO, he would just like enjoy his Sunday afternoon and he would run like a given coding agent in the back to try to replicate our Webflow page into code. And like he would use, I think Claude, he would use like Claude in the browser. He would use like other coding agents to just like evaluate them, but then also to learn more about like how it would behave. Right. So like I would say like that's number one thing that you should be thinking about. It's like set up these small experiments where you could test whether this process can work for you. And then also write down the things that you would notice of like, I don't know, Webflow, they have like a lot of JS scripts and a lot of like compressed code that it's sometimes harder for coding agents to parse it into like other type of code. And like jot down like all of those things that you notice and get a good like partner from like the engineering team to help you understand those patterns. So that was the first thing. And then once we figured out a good way on how we can transfer the page, and I think like one weekend he just sends me this link. He's like, look at this, like this is like one-to-one to our homepage. And frankly, it was not one-to-one, but like his engineering brain sees that as one-to-one. My marketing brain, I see like a lot of inconsistencies and I see a lot of slop. And I was like, okay, this is actually like 70% there. And that makes me enough, excited to actually proceed with this, right? So again, like he needs my perspective and I needed his. And at
Mhm.
that point, we started to think, okay, well, apparently we can do this. What are the next steps? And we started to define a process. The process basically was relying on me to write down all of the requirements that we need to do in order to transfer the content into this new repo. So that we do not hurt our SEO ranking, right? So like there are a lot of things. Like Webflow handles a lot of things out of the box for you, like the sitemap. It generates robots TXT. It handles a lot of like maybe technical SEO, like performance stuff that you get to think about right now that you haven't really thought about being a marketer and being like and using a SaaS tool that handles all of that for you. And so like there are a lot of primitives in Webflow that you need to now handle by yourself. So now that's your job. And that feels tricky, right? Because like it seems like you're creating more work for yourself. But like if the value that you want to get from this transfer actually exceeds what you can do as a marketing team, like that's all worth it, right? So like when you're building a project, you need to evaluate whether the KPIs that you're trying to reach is actually it makes sense with the effort that you're going to put into this project, right? So like find a great CTO partner. If I didn't have him, I think it would have been like very challenging. Start experimenting small and fast to test coding agents. Because if you just like decide on one coding agent without testing it, like it's gonna be like harder for you to come back to something else. Then Webflow comes with a lot of primitives. You need to write down like a proper PRD plan where you outline everything that you need to transfer, and it's a lot of work. Like I'm not gonna joke about this, but like I had like a full Notion doc that actually I'm gonna be showcasing my checklist at the conference. I plan to do that. But like you need to think about all of these things. And I feel like my process also has enabled a lot of my marketer friends because like I get to share this checklist with them now. So like they're not actually thinking about it a lot. And then you said about like a challenging thing. Coding agents, even today, and like we're in July right now, they're not really good at design. They struggle with design. And so we've made the decision back then of like we're okay into putting a lot more work into making these pages look like they have like a common and consistent theme, even if that means that we're going to spend a lot more thinking tokens on them or time from ourselves just to make it work, because our bet is that coding agents are going to be better. They're going to become better in design. So it's better to just like get ahead of ourselves here and start to do this and then reap the benefits once the coding agents are better. But like these days, honestly, it's all about like trying to handle that process of like, how do we keep a consistent design? So whenever my content marketing lead wants to publish a new landing page, how do I enable him to actually publish something that is actually consistent to the whole branding without having him to think about it twice? And so like there are a lot of things that I can talk about, like if you want to go into the details of that, and like how do I actually enable them?
I tried to cover as much as possible, and we should definitely put this as a reminder. But I also want to confirm that from my own experience, because we also migrated our site off WordPress to Claude Code. And I think it was a very humbling experience, because on the one hand, you can basically do everything, but then you have to be more thoughtful in deciding what do you actually want. And I feel like this is exactly what you just said, especially then also with design. You have to get really clear on what do you want, because if you tell Claude or whatever coding agent, Codex, etc., that it should look nice, it should look like modern, it should look tacky,
Yeah.
then this basically means nothing, and you will have some very generic designs. So I just wanted to confirm that 100%. But before we talk about enabling the team and how that actually looks like in practice, because I also feel like that's super important for other leaders that want to enable their team to use AI more, but in a thoughtful and like actually productive way. Let's quickly look into that content pipeline that you already mentioned, because I feel like people listening to this podcast would be very, very curious to understand how that works. So can you give us so what can you share about the content pipeline, how it works?
So the content pipeline, it's like very straightforward. We like our project lives in a Next.js repo right now, and like we handle like all of the code behind the landing pages there or behind the website, right? It's well connected with our app as well. So like every time I would want to run like a PLG experiment with like new messaging, like it's so easy for me to chat with Claude Code, to pass some events into our app, and then to pass some events into our analytics platform that we use, right? And it's all about just like working with Claude Code to enable me to do that. Like I don't even use any SaaS right now. But then there is the question of like, how do you handle your content? Like how do you build a content management system? Like should you build it from scratch or should you use a headless CMS? For us, it was really important to use a headless CMS. And what I mean by that is that, this CMS is just like integrated with our project. We publish content through the CMS without waiting for someone to redeploy the website. And so that means that my team right now can just like use the API from that CMS using their assistants. They can write and publish content by just like telling their agents to just like publish this. So it's literally that. It's literally like, okay, here's an article, just publish it for me. And they have like this whole sequence of rules on how that gets to be published. What are the APIs that that task should use? How do we create cover images on the fly? How do we link to other links in the website? How do we how do we handle the interlinking? How do we format these articles? Like for SEO and for GEO, we have like different types of formatting. We like within those two, we have different types of articles that we're writing. And so like a lot of the work right now, it's about like creating those rules and documenting them in markdown files so that my team doesn't get to think even a minute more than like what they need to do. They write great content, or they use like in some cases, and I can talk more about that, like we make trade-offs of like sometimes you put a lot more effort into your content, sometimes you rely on your assistant to do it. However, the assistant already has all of those rules that we have invested a lot of time working on through those markdown files, so that the assistant is going to create less AI slop for you. But then image generations, format, build out of the pages, we have rules documented in a lot of these files that their assistants have access to, so that every time we get to publish content, it's properly handled. And right now it works like 100% of the time.
So cool.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit more about these skill files? What exactly do you have in those? How detailed are they? Is it like how many skill files are it? Because I feel like
Mm.
some people have had the experience of working with skills in Claude Cowork, for example, or in Claude in some shape or form, but I feel like there's still a lot of room to educate people about how to leverage
Yeah.
skills in the best way possible.
Yeah. Definitely agree. I think what I've learned about writing the skill files is that first you need to document the process for yourself. You need to know what kind of information do you need to provide for a skill file. Then it's not only a file. It can be a folder with the skill file inside and another like documents that handle, I don't know, API requirements, credentials, and all of that. I mean, not credentials, like you don't put the credentials in the skills, they're stored securely, but like how do you connect with the system? What are the labels that you need to map in order to publish an article? How do you look up things? And so like you try to document every bit of data, and like for certain things on writing these files and these rules, a human is more readily, like equipped to write the information, and for some AI is like actually pretty useful. And so I can tell you what I mean by that. So for example, I was working with my content marketer lead in I think in June, and we started to do this like hands-on sessions because like I wanted to enable him to create like a frame of reasoning on how he can enable his assistant to do better work, because he was feeling like very challenged in how his assistant was working, because he was like, oh, it's creating a lot of slop and I don't know what to do about it. And or like I get to do more work and it's actually harder for me to do work because I feel like I'm going in circles. And like those are the things that you get to hear from people who are like really new to AI. And like he's actually very experienced with AI, and you can still fall into that trap. And so what we started to do in June, I started to have these hands-on sessions with him. And I was like, forget about the outcome and the output. Forget about the skill that you created with AI only. Like he would ask his assistant, like, oh, create this skill for me. I need to publish to this service, find a way to write it down, right? Like he didn't even sit down to think about like what should be in those files, because he wanted to move fast. And that's an illusion that AI gives us, right? Because like,
Hmm.
oh, now I can move fast. Like, why don't I just ask my assistant? Like I can just do it. And then I was like, okay, put that on the side. You and I, we have 2 hours. We're going to define this process. And based on this process, we're going to write the first draft of the skill. So like I advocate for this like a lot within my within our company, because like you need to first like own your process. Like you're doing this work. Like you're the expert. You bring the domain experience. Like AI is great in other things, but like you bring the domain experience, and like you bring the guardrails on how this assistant should work within a different within a specific task. And so like then we wrote it down. And she's like, oh, well, this is so good. Like I get to organize my thoughts better because like we get to work on the framework and the structure of this document. And then we write down the outline. There are certain rules that you need to follow in like writing skills, but like essentially, you need to test it out. Like you need to first write the first version, then you need to give it to your assistant, ask your assistant to do a task using the file, see how it's going to do it. Then you come back to the file, you update it. So like you also need to find some time into like experimenting with the file and adapting it as the assistant is using it. And so first we did that session. That was really productive. I always advocate for that. Then he started to use that with his assistant. The process was better, but there were still some issues. And then when I say that AI is actually good at documenting stuff for like very specific things, is that I don't want to go and read documentation and write down all of these rules on like how the skills should integrate with like Sanity's API, which is like the headless CMS that we use, AI is great for that. So like for that component, just ask AI, ask your assistant, like write down a documentation on how this skill should work with this system. And so for anything technical related, AI is great. For anything process related, you need to own that process and test it over and over. And so like these days, he is just like running wild. He has the best process, the best skills. Like most of our users actually are using his skills because like now he has everything set up from start to finish. And any assistant that would use those skills is going to be like 10 times more productive and better at doing that task than any assistant or AI out of the box.
Would you agree that, especially with skills that touch the process, that also touch like the shape of the output that we get, that you have to go slow first to go fast? So you have to take that time to actually make sure that the foundation is well, because otherwise, how can you expect a great output from a mediocre input?
Agreed. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah. I think, but you also touched on so many important principles, like AI is just a tool, and we have to understand what it's good for, and we have to understand where it's not good out of the box, but where we can make it good, basically. And I don't know, if you had to compare AI to a previous like breakthrough innovation, would you rather compare it to something like the internet or rather to something like the industrial revolution? Because I feel like it's hard to see a new technology that is just unfolding and to understand like what do we do with it. But then on the other hand, it's sometimes helpful to think about how did other things start and how did we humans adapt to it and how did we use it. And with the internet, at first also people didn't really understand what it's good for, what you can do with it. And now look at us recording this podcast based on the internet. So
I feel like I don't know if I have a good answer to that question, but like I can tell you something that I was joking with my friends last week is that I said that these days if you use AI, you can be worse and or better at your job. And if you don't use AI, you can be worse or better at your job. And so
it's not about AI.
It's not about AI. It's about like
it's about you.
It's about you. Exactly. Like it can make you worse or better. It's on you, like how you use it. And I don't know like what tool or like innovation to connect this with, but like it essentially comes back to like your domain experience, and like that's why engineers are so good with it. That's why like engineers are so good with it because like AI solves most of their work, which is like easily verifiable. Like if you code something, you can easily verify whether that code is working. Versus if you use AI for a marketing campaign, how do you verify whether that output is good or not? It's hard, right? And so I feel like engineers also were able to write better prompts. If you remember like 3 years ago, the models were like the pre-reasoning models, they weren't really good at just that reasoning, right? And you needed to prompt them well. And like skills is another component of that where you're still prompting the model, but like you don't need to be like very specific in how you prompt it. You just need to be very specific about your prompts and your rules, about your process and your rules. Before 2 years ago, it was like, how do I communicate this in the best way? How do I write the best instructions so that the model knows what it needs to do? And today, the models have become more powerful and better at doing things, but they don't know your processes. They don't know what you want to achieve. What is your actual task? How do you do that task? And you need to really document that task so that the model do like a great job at it.
You already shared a lot of things about how you enable your team. Is there anything you haven't shared yet that you learned over the last weeks, months, and years? How to especially enable non-technical teammates to use AI? And for example, if they use Claude Code, it immediately feels very technical.
Yeah.
To not shy away from it, but to actually embrace it and like see the superpowers of it, so to say?
Yeah, and like that's definitely the hardest part of this. I feel like deciding to do something is easy. Deciding to make a trade-off on something, it's easy. Making like using AI or paying for Claude Code or like learning how to use Claude Code, that's somewhat easy. What this falls back into is like the organizational change. And like this is a very important question that you just asked me, right? Because like you need, like, as a manager or as a founder or as someone who's like enabling teams to use AI, like this is not about like changing a few things. This is about like changing everything in how you do work. And so like you need to be ready to make that change. And you need to be ready to enable the people to not be scared of that change and to enable them with the right resources, with the right mindset, and to spend time into helping them get on board with that new narrative. And most importantly, because like it's so scary for a lot of people. Like I'm feeling like very um excited about AI. Like I love everything that it's doing for me at work, for us at work, for our company. Just like in general, I see my mom and my father using ChatGPT on the daily. They're not that technical. They never were like, yes, they've used the laptop in their life, but like they weren't growing up in the technology era like we did. Um, and so like I like the impact that it's having, but I also understand like how scary it is for a lot of people because of, you know, it's so unpredictable. You don't know if you're actually gonna lose your job. You don't know if this is actually gonna automate your work, if your company is gonna make a decision to just like use more AI or what. Like you need to spend like a meaningful time in like enabling your team. And so that's something that I've learned actually in the last month or two that kind of connects to this is that I'm trying to um just like it stems from my team, but that I also get to talk with like the founders on like how do we enable the whole company. It's like specifically what I talked is like how do you define the right process to do a task well with AI? How do you enable the right mindset to approach your problems with AI? And how do you build the confidence in your colleagues that they're the actual expert and that it's literally their judgment and their taste and their common sense that should drive all of these processes instead of AI. And AI is just an amplifier, right? AI can only make you better at work, but like you need to own the process. And like specifically what it comes down to is like a lot of like workshops, a lot of sessions, a lot of hands-on sessions like the one that I just mentioned. It comes back to like setting the right example. It comes back to just like communicating with your team that they should be proud of their work. And I feel like if they use AI prematurely, they're not even proud of their work because they don't feel like they're involved in the output that this is creating. And if somehow you feel disconnected from it and you're like, okay, this feels like slop, this feels like it's not good enough. What is the problem? Why are other people using AI better than I am? So like there's some like dissatisfaction that forms if they don't know how to use AI and they feel like they're lacking either the skills or the mindset to actually do that. And they blame themselves. Usually they're like, oh, well, I should know this better, etc. And like I would argue that it's up to people who are more versed in using AI and managers and like founders who need to instill this into them because like we cannot expect people to just like know how to use this, and especially in marketing teams.
I know you have a, I would say, rather unconventional take on the ROI of AI.
Yeah,
Can you share that also with the audience?
I don't think it's unconventional, but yeah, I'll share it.
Okay, maybe I felt like, okay, let me put it that way. I feel like a lot of people are talking about the ROI of AI in a certain way, mostly
Mhm. Yeah,
being I can cut costs.
yeah,
And then you basically said it's not about cutting costs. And then I felt
yeah,
like, okay, this is an interesting perspective. Let's
yeah,
hear more.
yeah, yeah. I still don't think that it's unconventional. I just think like, you know,
Maybe it's the exactly right perspective.
I don't know if it's exactly right, but like it's a way of thinking and approaching it. I feel like I posted about how we offboarded off of Webflow on Twitter, and then I literally said in the first post that we save $30,000 per year. Like, that's an obvious hook. As a marketer, you do that. Like, that's what people care about. But then what people struggle to understand is that I actually want to double the spend on, anything related to what we do on the top of funnel with marketing and content. But I want us to have 10 times more, if not 100 times more of an output. Like, I'm willing to spend a lot more money on intelligence tokens if that means that we can sprint, we can move fast, we can validate messaging, we can launch campaigns 10 times faster. And if that means that my team can become like 10x marketing team, I'm willing to pay twice, if not thrice more. And so, like, it's not about like saving money. It's about like not paying money for things that slow you down. And to be honest with you, like, we actually pivoted the business in January of this year. And previously we were building like a B2B SaaS, and now we're in the consumer market. And in the previous scenario, we were relying a lot on HubSpot, and we were doing a lot of sales calls, and like we needed an obviously, like a CRM to manage all of those contacts. And these days, from January on, like, we only used HubSpot for like the marketing components that they have, and specifically email. And now we're offboarding off of HubSpot, and I think like we're spending $4,000 a month on HubSpot these days, and we have onboarded to Recent. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
But I don't even want to use like a SaaS marketing client. I just want something that runs fast, that my assistant can understand. And now all of our transactional emails, all of our marketing emails, all like every kind of email that we need to send is handled through Recent, and my assistant basically handles that for me because I have the right skills, the right rules, and all of that. And now we're offboarding off of HubSpot, and we're onboarding on Recent, and it's all about like my assistant doing the job right now. And my assistant can design the emails. My assistant can design like a lot of like creatives that I need on the fly because it knows our Figma. It's also connected to Figma. It's also connected to our branding. And like what I'm trying to do is like to enable my assistant to work like me by putting down the time to define how that should be.
Yeah, I feel like it also involves a lot of systems thinking, right? I mean, you're obviously someone that is able to look at something and then like also look at it from a very abstract perspective. So you are able to zoom out, zoom in, basically look at, hey, I mean, even being aware of the process that you're following and being aware of the building components is something that is, I would say it's probably a good skill that good leaders also had before, but that has also now become a superpower with AI because you have this new tool set and you're able to leverage it way more due to this way of thinking. So,
Exactly.
but I still come across a lot of people that I feel like struggle a little bit with this like system thinking, being able to zoom out, zoom in, and have a lot of like also perspective change. What would you say to those that basically, if you tell them, hey, you have to do more systems thinking, that tell you, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and the answer is
Thanks.
not straightforward, I think, because it depends on like the experiences that they've been through. As I said, like some fields they educate you on like system thinkings more than others. Like if I went to school to learn like marketing, I don't think that I would have picked up on like problem solving skills as much as I've picked up because like I was learning how to code and how to solve problems in code, right? So like it comes back to previous experiences, and then it comes back to just like honestly, like if you're a junior, or like if you still struggle with the system thing, because I feel like senior marketers, like they wouldn't struggle as much because like they should have went through some challenges in their work that could have enabled them to like form the systems thinking. But like if you're junior and if you're struggling with that, I feel like it's up to your manager and the team. Just like find an environment that it's gonna challenge that in you. That's the number one thing. And then second is like find ways on how you can help yourself. And so what I usually talk with my team is that some type of work shuts your brain. And some type of work makes you just like think of ideas, and like it fires up like your creative side, and like you get to think about things, and like you get more motivated. And like some things are so boring to do. Some things are more exciting to do. And usually when we plan the week for any of the marketers on my team, like I get to have a mix of both, because they need to pick themselves up with the creative stuff and the things that they get excited with, and they need to use that energy to do the things that are boring, and that just like it's like a repetitive thing to do. And so, for example, like if you do GEO today, it's all about the format. It's all about just like writing articles for AI search, versus if you I don't know, if you run a campaign with UGC creators, that like requires a lot more thought, right? And so like if you mix the two within a week, if you have like two projects that span between those two topics, then you get to like capture a new perspective, apply it here, and then get motivated to do more. And then throughout that, you actually get to learn, or to be motivated to learn, like how you can think about things, because you get the mix of both worlds. And like the manager should like push you to do both things, because like obviously like there's boring work and there's fun work. We need to do both. um but then like a good balance of the two and a good mix of the two could actually instill some set of thinking that then you can apply to do both better, or to then like as an extension do better with AI, or as an extension in the future to lead a team to then transfer that knowledge to them.
Mm. How do you think about the idea that some people have raised, that a strong leader nowadays is
Mm-hmm.
basically the person that contributes stuff with the highest leverage? So basically flipping the idea of a leader, the higher up you go the ladder, the more you are detached basically from
Mm-hmm.
individually contributing work, and more like managing and
Mm-hmm.
looking at dashboards and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I mean, looking at dashboards can also be cool, but anyway, but how do you think about that? Do you feel like that's actually something that is viable for also day-to-day work, or is it just like a fancy idea, a provocative thought? How do you think about that, also from yourself and also like your peer group? I guess other leaders from other startups and also other companies you talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um you touched upon a very interesting topic that I have been advocating for in the last 2 months.
Hmm.
So
We didn't script this.
we didn't script this. This is so funny that you actually mentioned it. But I think so today in our startup, and we're like 25 people, like I have a role that it's more required to manage and help other people do better work. And like all of my life, like I wanted to climb the ladder, right? Like I wanted to be the best at what I do. Then I wanted to grow into a senior marketer, senior growth person. Then I wanted to lead a team. And now I get to do that. But like practically and within a startup and with AI, I feel like I can have better contribution to the startup if I am a high impact individual contributor. And that feels like demotion, right? But like think about it. Like we've built all of these organizations to have like a hierarchical structure because we needed people to manage teams so that they actually achieve like KPIs or whatever that you set per month. But imagine if you get to build like a flat organization where all of your team members, they have their own ownership, they have the right system thinking, and they have AI that enable them to create 10 times more output than a team of 10 people. Or than me just like going into like their channels and trying to tweak things. Like it's so much faster for them to experiment. It's so much faster for them to make mistakes and learn from it and like build that judgment and that agency for themselves to be a high impact individual contributors. So like these days I'm actually enabling my team so that all of us are individual contributors within a specific channel. So like I have one person that manages content. I have another that manages community. I'm mostly on like activation and retention right now. And like I have like a blended role of like I'm gonna jump into processes and things where I can bring the biggest value, because like I understand the business from like both perspectives. And but like I feel like I'm more useful to the company today in an operational role than a management role, because like with AI we can move so much faster, we can do so much more. And this actually like it stemmed from what we were doing at Vellum, but like you mentioned peers, I read this also from Elena Verna. She's the head of growth at Lovable, and like I love everything that she writes about. And like she specifically did this, like this exact thing. And I think like she calls it like high IC or something like that. But like she's like, I can be so much more useful for Lovable if I get to just jump on projects and like be more involved in the things that I want to do and like contribute to stuff than like managing a team. Like everyone is like 10 times more powerful. We just need the right systems. And that's why I said like it's an organizational change. And Lovable gets to do it because they're a new company. We get to do it because we're small and a new company. It's definitely going to be harder for a company that has been on the market and that has worked in a certain way, but we're also seeing that happen. I don't know if you noticed, ClickUp, they had like a lot of layoffs 2 months ago. And it was devastating. I think like they let go like 42% of their workforce. And it is devastating. But what they're trying to do is like they're trying to build competitiveness on the market by truly just like deleting everything that they knew up to that point and starting to build the organization with the workforce for the future. And they actually introduced $1 million salary bands for new AI first hires. So that means that like if they hire you, Nicholas, and if you know all like how to scale your work with AI, like you're gonna be paid $1 million per year because you get to work like 10 people. Right. And so like
It's
that's
it's it's not bad, but I have a very well running agency, so
there you go.
no, just kidding.
Not
Yeah, I
interesting.
mean it's crazy. It's crazy. I would be curious to see after a year how many people actually reach the top of the salary band. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely something that gives food for thought. Let's put it like
for
that.
sure, for sure. I think like generally we're moving towards more flatter organizations. But that requires a lot of like education, enablement, systems thinking, as you said. And it's not an easy thing to do, for sure. Like
Yeah.
it almost sounds like very idealistic, but
Mm,
it's so much more doable today than it was in the past. And it's gonna be like even easier to do in like 5 years from now because of AI.
mm. I have one question because I mean, in the ideal world, you have this type of people on your team, and you maybe at Vellum, you most probably only have those types, people that are willing to learn, willing to embrace the change, and willing to also go through that time of having to unlearn a lot of stuff and then learn a lot of new stuff. But what's your perspective on the people that, yeah, might be more like resistant to change, also might have a hard time, not only because they're not motivated, but also maybe just due to the personality structure, etc., have a
Yeah.
more hard time to lean into new stuff? What would you say if those people are in organizations today? And I mean, there are different jurisdictions in the world, and in a lot of jurisdictions, also you cannot just let go of all the people. And I also happen to come across companies where they have people in the team that have exactly that situation. What would you say to someone leading a team that has these types of people on the team, but they still want to transform these people? Where should they start? Like, what do you need to get right to also turn like the most critical person into a raving fan, so to say?
Yeah. That's hard, right? Um, I
I'm
would
only
say
asking hard questions here on this podcast.
yeah, you've asked me so many hard questions, but no, I love it.
I should have told you earlier before you agreed to come on.
No, I feel like that is always going to be a challenge. Like no matter whether like they should be using AI or like if we're going through this innovation, like it was a challenge even before, right? I think like startups like us, we evaluate for that when we interview new people, right? Um, and like it's a filter that we set when we hire, so that like we're very intentional with who we hire and like the type of people that we need on the team. And like for leaders, first and foremost, it's important to mitigate that. If you're working at a startup, if it's a fast-paced startup like ourselves, like we're working in the AI industry, like everything is changing day by day, and like we need people who can adapt and who are willing to learn and just like grow throughout that experience. And so like just evaluate for that and be intentional with who you hire, right? But what happens if like you want to restructure your team? And so I think personally for me, and like this is just like my style and like how I lead my team, I'm very direct, and I don't overwhelm them with like a lot of information that it's gonna make them feel, you know, comfortable. Like I like to challenge them, but like they know I mean well, and they know that I spend a lot of time thinking about like how they should grow, or like how not how they should grow, like that's a word, that's not a proper way to say it, but like I want to find and tap into the things that they love to do and enable them to become 10 times better in that. And it's up to me to notice those things for them, because sometimes they cannot capture that. And like every time when I talk to them about it, I would say like something like, "Oh, I just noticed this. How do you feel about that?" And they would tell me like, "Oh, how did you notice that? Like I wasn't even aware of that." And like they would come a month after to me and they would say like, "That was so true. Like I get to see the world in this new way." So like one, like be mindful to understand how each of them work and how each of them gets motivated, because like we're all different. We all get motivated from like different things. Try to tap into that motivation to just like help them feel comfortable to grow and to accept the change. But then also like be very direct of what is expected of them, because like no one wants to feel like they've been played, or like um they've been told to do something without actually telling them what's going on. So just like don't be vague, be direct, outline everything that needs to be outlined, and she's like, we're a team. There's no ego, there's nothing. We're all here to do a job, be great at it. Greatness is the goal. If you want to do that,
Mm,
I want to help you, help me help you. And that's it.
mm. I feel like identifying the things that people love is such a beautiful way to look at it, because everybody has a passion, and if you unpack that passion, if you help people, obviously, and if people have weaknesses, you sometimes have to try to like reduce the impact of those weaknesses. But I always also believe that if you allow people to engage in what they like to do, they will become so much better so quickly, because it's not hard. Like even if it's challenging, it's not hard because you like what you do. So that's a really great way to put it. I have two more questions because honestly, time has flown. So the first one, if you had to share one like idea or framework or tip or takeaway with other marketing leaders about AI or search, AI search, whatever, what would that be? One
Yeah,
thing that people should take away.
I think like the common theme of this whole conversation is like don't be scared to start using coding agents and enable your marketing team
Mm-hmm.
with those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be scared to make the trade-offs today, because AI is only going to get better,
Mm.
right? So like when I talked about like Webflow and like coding agents not being good about design, like don't worry
Yeah.
about that now. Like be willing to spend enough time to enable your agents today to do that, because like in a year from now they're going to get better at that. What it's really important is like you invest a lot of time into enabling your team. And like
Mm.
your competitors are already doing this, right? Like
Yeah,
you
that's mm.
yeah. You should get ahead, and don't be scared of the friction. Don't be scared of like failing throughout this process, because like this is so new. Like no one really knows how to do these things. And like listen to podcasts like this, talk to your peers, um go to conferences,
Yep.
Like be
Masters of
open.
Search front
Yeah, yeah,
Masters of Search
exactly.
conference, Berlin, October. Just
Yeah,
saying.
exactly. Just saying.
You
Yeah.
can hear
Yeah,
Anita speak.
stop this.
You can maybe have a cappuccino with Anita and learn some of the behind the scenes stuff. Um,
There's
okay,
actually
that's
something very interesting that I just did like 2 weeks ago. So I have my own personal AI assistant, Ava.
don't share
Um,
too much. Always keep a spoiler or always
okay.
keep a cliffhanger.
I'm just gonna say that if this was Google Meet, Ava would have been here and she would be just like not only taking notes, but she would be doing things for me in the back. Like if I say
Okay,
like, "Hey, Ava, this is something that I want to do. Can you handle that for me?" Like she's already on it.
awesome. Okay, that's really intriguing. You have to give me like a private beta of that.
Yeah, right.
I would also be willing to spend money on it. But then my last question is, what didn't we talk about that we should have talked about?
I think that like a common theme right now is that AI is going to automate a lot of jobs, right? And even like the most fearless leaders are scared because like, no, I get to do more work. I need to catch up. I need to educate. Like everyone needs to upskill right now, right? And like it puts a pressure even to the most fearless leader. I think that AI is going to create more jobs than it's going to automate. And I just want to leave everyone with that thought. Um, it's the transition. I'm not saying the transition is not going to be painful. It's going to be painful for probably more for specific roles or regions or industries. But like history tells us that, we can adapt pretty well to uncertainty, to change and all of that. And I think very deeply about this because like again, like my work, it's not only like on marketing, but it's also about like positioning and like how the market is gonna move and like how the AI industry is gonna develop and like I want to get ahead of that and build the product for the future. And to do that, I've started to just like read and educate myself on a lot of like economic points of views on how this could develop um, and how it can impact like the labor market. And so if you think about it, like AI could automate jobs and the wages will go down, right? And that's gonna be catastrophic. Like a lot of people are gonna lose their jobs. Or AI can make us more productive and we will create more work. And if you ask anyone who uses Claude Code right now, they think that they're working 10 times more. um, and so like I believe in the second way of thinking. And I truly believe that it's gonna make us more productive, that it's gonna create like new types of work. Um, and that at the end it's gonna be like us adapting and like us doing like more productive work, novel work, something that we're gonna create. And if you look at like what like leaders from Anthropic and OpenAI have been saying, like they've all portrayed like the doomsday scenario of AI. Like, why aren't you worried? And then I was looking at all of the layoffs and all of that. I was like, this is actually gonna make us better. And it's gonna make like certain industry be more expensive, right? Like right now in the US, if I punch a fist in my wall and if I make a hole, it's cheaper to buy a TV than to get someone to fix the wall, which is wild, right? So like when one industry becomes like so productive, like AI, other industries they become more expensive. And like that's just like the economic point of view. But like yes, AI will automate some jobs, but then it's also going to make us more productive and it's going to create a lot more work for people to do. So I'm kind of on that positive spectrum and I want to leave people with that. And I want to leave people with the notion that, you own this. Like it's literally in your hands. Like this tech cannot change who you are.
That's a good note to close on. Anita, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing so much about how you think, how you approach things, how you lead your team, and all the learnings you gained along the way. I'm already very much looking forward to the conference and hearing you speak there and sharing more. And I can also very much recommend to everybody to follow Anita either on LinkedIn or on X, I think, or Twitter. X, what used to be Twitter, because you regularly, irregularly post a lot of stuff that you do and share your learnings. So that's also a cool way to keep up. And yeah, what's left to say? Just thank you for sharing so much, so openly, and very much looking forward to meeting in Berlin in October.
Of course. And again, thanks for the invitation. Really enjoyed it. We should do another one after I cancel other SaaS platforms in the next 6 months.
Yeah, we'll do that, surely. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Thanks so much.
All
See
right.
you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.